everybody, and welcome to the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and I am so glad that you are here. It's an incredible time to be tuning in, especially for those of you who are in perimenopause or are in menopause. Remember that our show is about engaging conversation, elevating health and wellness, and empowering transformation. And no matter how you're tuning in today for today's episode, just know that wherever you're streaming in live from, remember that we have show notes at the very bottom of your screen. So for reference points and some information that are truly takeaway informations, you are really going to want to write those down and at least have that point to remember. So without further ado, let's get into this today. I'm so excited to be bringing up an incredible woman who helps to represent this ever-evolving space for when it comes to the menopause journey and what women go through as we get older. So Tina Jacobs, she is a certified physician associate. She is a certified health and weight loss coach. She is the owner of Silk Life Medical. She helps women over 40 balance their hormones and reach their ideal weight through Bio-Identical Hormone Replacement, medical weight loss therapies, and health coaching. She started Silk Life Medical after going through her own weight loss journey, and we're going to talk about that in detail. She had struggled for many years before she had personally identified that hormone changes were significantly impacting her metabolism. So we go into deep dive, but let's get all into it. None other than it's Tina Jacobs. Tina, welcome. How are you?
Hi, thank you, Adriana. I'm amazing. I'm so grateful to be here.
I'm excited that you're here, and I got to tell you that you and I have a connection. It goes back a couple of years, and I got to tell the viewers, those who are tuning in, that Tina, actually, I am actively seeing her because as a perimenopausal woman, you know, I've come to realize how valuable her services are and what she does for women that she works with. And so it was a no-brainer for me to have her on the show so that we can do a deeper dive into hormone imbalances and all how this impacts us. So Tina, tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got from there to here.
Yeah, well, I started, getting into this field about 7 years ago. And what led to that was my own health journey. So 10 years back, I was 40 pounds overweight. I was tired all the time, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. I loved kickboxing, was very active. I ate a pretty healthy vegan diet. And so I went to my doctor or OBGYN multiple times saying, there's something going on with my body. Like as a woman, we have that intuition of like something's off. And, they did all the basic blood tests and said, everything's normal. You just need to eat less and exercise more. And personally, I internalized that as, okay, so they're saying it's not a medical thing. This is my fault. Like, I need to figure this out. And I struggled with that for many years before getting more detailed blood testing that really identified that there were hormone changes going on. I didn't realize that at basic primary care medicine, they're just kind of skimming the surface, checking for extreme hormone changes, and waiting for it to get pretty severe before they'll, identify it and treat it. And so that's what kind of led to the tagline, it's not your fault, it's your hormones, because I really want to be able to reach other women who are in that situation. And one of the biggest things is so many women don't realize it's their hormones. Like you mentioned, how important this is for women in perimenopause or menopause, but a lot of women in perimenopause don't even know that's what's going on. By age 40, 90% of women will have symptoms of perimenopause. And not even related to that, because symptoms can be vague, like just feeling more tired all the time, just having more anxiety or depression, gaining weight when you weren't gaining weight before. And so really, that's the message I want to get out most. And that led to me starting this business where I get to connect with so many women and get them the answers they really need on a daily basis.
I love how you transitioned into really furthering the cause. And one thing that I realized for me, okay, so I'm 50, but the how women in my family have been, they enter menopause later, and it didn't occur to me to think about that in detail until very recently. Can you talk a little bit about, menopause, and why this isn't something that is often talked about, but maybe slowly emerging these days, of things to look out for us women?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in traditional medicine, we're still waiting for you to completely see that sharp decline where you're getting the hot flashes, the night sweats, those really sudden changes where your hormones, a lot of your sex hormones are close to nothing. And really, menopause doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process. Testosterone starts highest, in your 20s and slowly declines once you reach age 30. And estrogen will slowly start to decline in your 40s. And then when you get to menopause, that's when it's at its lowest and you're noticing those most severe symptoms. But that's part of the reason it's not talked about, because it can be so many vague symptoms like anxiety and depression, for example. If that starts at age 40, it's probably not a chemical imbalance. It's probably more related to your hormones, but still nowadays that's just being addressed with, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. And so it's not really being addressed or looked at or flagged until a woman is 50 in most cases.
Why do you think there's a lag with the clinician, the clinical environment? Why do you think that this has been just something that just is not up to par with society, with women in society and our needs?
Well, I think there's two things going on. I think one is it's a cause that's really just women. We know if men were going through this sudden shift or like drop off in their testosterone, it wouldn't be something where we're just like, yeah, maybe we'll treat it. You won't have that drive at work. You won't have that energy. You won't, be able to maintain your weight. But, it's just part of life, and as women, we're not treated as equals in that way. We know that for men, there's medications, for treating dysfunctions in the bedroom. There's medications for, or FDA approved medications for treating testosterone decline. That's not the same for women. And with women, there's medications out there that have the same risks and the exact same benefits that won't be FDA approved because they don't see women enjoying the bedroom time as important as men enjoying the bedroom time.
I
And
think
so
that's shocking to me. I mean, when I think about that, and I've thought about that, it's it's a little upsetting that
it
it's
really is.
this imbalance.
There's definitely that imbalance. And secondly, it's safety concerns. There was this very misleading data that came out after the Women's Health Initiative in the 1990s. So there was the Times Magazine came out with the cover, unfortunately, saying 25% of women who use hormones will get breast cancer. And if you saw that as a woman, you'd be terrified. Women were calling their doctors and stopping all hormone treatments. And, this one article, I think, was probably the greatest disservice of all time to women's health. And what really happened there is just a misinterpretation of the data. We know as scientists in medicine or in health that you can look at data and manipulate it a certain way to use it for a story, to make it more scary, to, make it that way. But the truth of the matter is that in the study, if they tested women, from age 50 to age 80, putting them on hormones. And if you look at just the women in their 70s who had went through menopause and had no hormones for over 20 years, and then restarted hormone therapy, some of those risks were slightly increased. And 8 out of 10,000 women, 8 more people than the compared group in their 70s got breast cancer. And so what this tells us, and what we can actually learn from this data, is that if you start hormone therapy in your 40s or latest in your 50s, you're not only don't have those risks, But the data actually shows you're less likely to get breast cancer and other forms of cancer. You're less likely to have hypertension or high cholesterol. You're less likely to have osteoporosis and breaking bones. You're less likely to have diabetes and insulin resistance. And so the fact that women, because of that one study, have been avoiding hormone therapy is the most, thing that breaks my heart the most.
So do you think so? What's been the dialogue in the clinical setting over the years, or say over the last several years, of what other practitioners, what their take is? Do you feel like that there's more talk about it, that or that there's more talk?
Definitely.
So there is more talk. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what's the vibe?
Yeah. So even like 20 years ago, I'd say most primary care physicians or OBGYNs were still like, avoid hormones as much as you can, just because of certain studies that came out. And nowadays, I'd say when I work with patients and their primary care providers, because a lot of times there is a need for an interaction there, I see about 60% are supportive of hormone therapy because they actually know the data. But there's still that 40% that are scared because this isn't their field of study. So they haven't really dove into that data. And it's really easy to have those misconceptions. And so over time, it's slowly changed as more and more studies have come out showing how not only safe or not only effective, but extremely safe these products are, and how they actually prevent the most common reasons that women die from, like cardiovascular disease.
That's super true. Are you finding that there is still that element of limited optimism from other healthcare providers that more needs to be done? Is it still, do you think that some of it is based on like maybe the training that they've had, but that they've not chosen to study further into menopause? Is that
Yeah,
part of
that's definitely part of it. I'm a PA. So as a PA, we get 50 or 75% of medical school in 50% of the time. So we're getting, we're trained under, the same curriculum as doctors. And in PA school or in friends that I've spoken to with medical school, we're learning how these hormones work. We're briefly learning what happens at menopause and the couple, medications approved by the FDA that are available. But we're not getting that deep understanding of what women really go through in perimenopause, postmenopause, and the treatments available. Part of the reason for that is if you're using bioidentical hormones, it's never going to be FDA approved because it's similar to a vitamin. Like if not in effect, but in what the umbrella of, things like your over-the-counter vitamin D or other over-the-counter vitamins, none of those are FDA approved because they're naturally occurring substances and they won't be trademarked and made into a name brand product that would be approved and go through the process of the FDA. And so very similar bioidentical hormones, which would be the safest form of hormones, aren't going to go through that process. And because of that, not going through that process won't be taught in medical school.
So where is the hiccup in getting to the ideal goal of having maximum options for women? Where's the hang up, say, with the FDA? Is it that we just don't, is that there's not enough studies and that we legitimately need more studies? Do you think that there's a level of reluctance to do a further dive? And so now we've got trailblazers trying to move the needle forward and it's a story developing type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I am still very hopeful that we'll continue to have more options more readily available than women having to go to outside of their primary care or OBGYN to really get all these options on the table. And I think a lot of it is, that lack of really knowing the data and having that education about these different options and the studies that have been done on them. I still talk to, doctors who will say things like, yeah, there's just not enough studies, or it's, the studies I've looked at is just not safe. The truth is there's over 10,000 studies on these bioidentical hormone replacements and their safety and efficacy. And so it's really, when you look at any natural treatment, that, you work with a lot, And it's much harder for the standard medical team to be like, okay, let's go and just change your lifestyle and, get on these supplements and all that. They're like, here's a medication, and we're still in primary care medicine. That's the direction we're still going versus looking at treating the root cause.
And this is huge because, we touched earlier on perimenopause being obviously the stage prior to. What makes it so vague that it's not, that it's something that maybe not a lot of women, or say, we don't have the vast majority of women understanding how perimenopause is affecting them, especially as they're entering, say, 40s and such.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is that it's not being brought up by their doctors. Doctors aren't addressing it until they get to that menopausal state. So a lot of women will just chalk it up to, like, I'm a busy mom, or I'm hardworking, I'm a busy mom. It makes sense that I'm tired all the time. It makes sense that I'm stressed and I can't sleep. But if these things start to happen, like they weren't problems for you previously, or they were and they've gotten a lot worse, around that age, especially, after age 40, for some women, it can even happen a little sooner, then we know that it's related to those hormone changes most likely. And that's the last thing I would say about that is, we're not doing detailed enough testing. If someone comes in saying they have anxiety, we're giving a medication. We're not testing like, oh, could this be caused by low testosterone or an adrenal imbalance, or, a early thyroid dysfunction?
Do you ever, so as you see women coming in, and obviously they're from different backgrounds of
Yeah.
different levels of support, what is the most common scenario that you see? Do you see, like, for example, do you see more likely than not women going, I have no idea where to begin, I feel like things are off? Or are you seeing more and more women be very concrete in describing their symptoms and what's happening? Or what has that been like for you?
Yeah.
What have you been
It
seeing?
is a lot of, getting that message out that it's not, it's not your fault, it's your hormones, because there's still a lot of women that don't realize that's what's going on. A lot of times they're searching for weight loss solutions and they come across me and they're like, "Oh, wait. Like, that's kind of my story. I do exercise, I do eat healthy, but for the last couple of years I've just been gaining weight." And so it's like that light bulb moment of like, oh, this could actually be something just biologically going on with me that I could fix.
Yeah, and this is, I think this is fantastic because the more dialogue that we're having, the more that at least we're doing more than scratching at the surface. And I'm wondering, what's your take in terms of women really putting a little bit more emphasis and maybe pressure on society to, talking to their doctors and just those who they've been working with. What, in your mind, what's the vision of moving the needle forward for women to use their voices more? And I know I'm asking a loaded
Mm.
question, but what would that look like?
Women being open about these topics. A lot of times, even women who do identify it, they fix the problem, they get back to their normal weight, and they're still not really sharing their stories. And I think the more that women are willing to open up and share their experience, the more other women will be able to, understand that. And the more that, their doctors will also see, like, because you can see these on even the basic lab tests. Like, once women start hormones, that they're markers of overall health and, predictors of longevity, like, looking at their cholesterol or looking at, their glucose or things like that have changed. And so if more women, are vocal about it, and, the more women that we can reach to actually help, the more, the doctors will see that as well.
That's true. And I agree with you on the dialogue. And I've learned, especially since meeting you and working with you, I've learned that it's important to just be as candid as possible, and just to not be afraid or not be ashamed
Yeah.
to share how I'm feeling. And so, and I wonder if a lot of this goes back to the stigma of us being older. And so then as we're getting older, suddenly it's not looking so fantastic. And so it seems as though we're dealing with this as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, definitely as we get older as women, it's almost like accepted that, we're not going to be able to maintain our weight as well. We're not able to keep the energy up. And, in the back in the early 1900s, like, and beyond, like, we were still, that was our lifespan was still to age, 50 or 60. And that's when about menopause happened. And, we died shortly after that. But nowadays, women are living 50% or even at least a third of their life after menopause. So we can't be living it on this like lower state, where we don't have the energy anymore. We don't have the drive, in our careers or those things because of hormone changes.
Yeah, this is so very true. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back here on the Health Revolution.
Coming this spring, by popular demand, the second season show on the Tour of Love.
And the E360 TV platform is saying we want the Tour of Love.
With winner of the first Global Impactor Award, Tamara Hunter, along with Emmy-winning co-host Skip Thomas.
We are going on tour, on the road. It's time. Love unites, and there is healing through connections. This is a worldwide movement, the Tour of Love.
We're back here on the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison. We were spending some quality time with Tina Jacobs, certified physician associate, owner of Silk Life Medical. We are talking, especially in the space of perimenopause and menopause, and it's not your fault, it's your hormones. And so I want to take a deeper dive into HRT. And what let's begin with what it's designed to do and the benefits and what it's done over the course of since its introduction to it being something for menopause women to, and even perimenopause women to consider and integrate.
Yeah. I mean, it's meant to maintain those hormone levels of when we are before menopause, basically. So we're not, driving your hormones to insane levels. We're just maintaining that hormone balance, which we know is healthiest. Initially, like we talked about earlier, testosterone can start to decline in your 30s. Estrogen will slowly decline in your 40s. By menopause, you'll have that sharp change. And as far as treating these things, when it comes to testosterone, a lot of women think of that as the male hormone. They'll think of it as, just for sex drive and that it's men. But for women, we have about 20% the amount that men have, but that 20% is so important. Yes, it does play a role in sex drive and enjoying sex, but there's so much more to it. There's, the mood balancing effects, its effect on your ability to sleep well, your energy, that drive to get up and go. And like, if you feel like, in your 20s and 30s, like you really had more of a drive for your career and more energy with the kids, like that's what you've lost. And we think of it as just like a willpower or mental thing, but it's actually a biological change happening. And
And so, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, and I was just going to say with the estrogen, that's, a different side of the coin. Most of those symptoms won't be until later in your 40s that you'll really notice. So those testosterone symptoms are first, but that the estrogen decline is really what causes the hot flashes or night sweats, but definitely plays a role in if you have insomnia, a lot of times that can be low estrogen. Depression can be related to low estrogen as well. And lastly, we have progesterone. So unlike men who have that just really high level of testosterone and minimal levels of other hormones, women are that web of hormones, that estrogen, progesterone, and estrogen being balanced is really what's ideal. And the progesterone is the one that's very calming. So if you take it at bedtime, it will help us sleep, but also really keep your mood balanced throughout the day.
And so, and to me, it's fascinating because I remember first coming across how important it was to have a little look at these levels. I'm blown away by the integration and how whether your levels of tired, whether or not someone is tired or not, that there's a direct correlation with some of these hormones. And I don't ever recall having a conversation about testosterone, progesterone, or estrogen prior to meeting you. And I'm just, in a lot of ways, quite frankly, I'm shocked that it's not talked about more.
Yes, it's the most frustrating thing that because it's so important to women, like we talked about, it can be a thing because it only affects women that it's not talked about as much. But you're right that that knowledge just isn't out there. So that's why it's really my mission to get the word out,
Yes. What about thyroid? How does that play a role in the general landscape? And of course, obviously, individual results may vary. They will vary between one woman and the next.
Yeah.
What role does thyroid and thyroid levels play as a woman is entering perimenopause and menopause? And then what can HRT do for thyroid levels?
Yeah. So when you go through menopause or perimenopause and that testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone are changing, it could really have a cascade of effects on your hormones. We know that with those changes, women become more prone to thyroid dysfunction. They also become more prone to insulin or leptin resistance, since testosterone is so important in the in the role of breaking down glucose in the body. Also plays a role in that adrenal health and that thyroid health. And so definitely becomes more common as women go through perimenopause and menopause to have decline in thyroid. And thyroid is so essential to metabolism. So how much energy you have and how your ability to burn fat. And so that it's really important to take a look at, during menopause, but at any point, like if you're having any symptoms of, not having the same energy you used to have, or not having, noticing you don't burn fat as easily, taking a look at your thyroid in detail is really important. And a lot of times, one simple test, a TSH, is done at primary care medicine. And, women are told yeah, everything's normal. But if you look deeper, there can be a lot of dysfunction going on that we're missing with that one test. At our office, if we're testing the thyroid, we're doing 6 tests to identify the health of your thyroid. And there was one study that showed that because we're only looking at TSH in primary care medicine, and because we have these wide ranges of what's considered normal, I'd say it was 8 out of 10 women are being diagnosed with thyroid dysfunction much later than they could have if they just did the more detailed testing.
Oh, wow. Now, why is it that it's not as available?
I mean, there's different things to consider. One of the things is, insurance still kind of regulates what's going to be tested. And especially in primary care medicine, they're more geared towards following insurance guidelines. Insurance wants to see that TSH level change to be able to treat it. And so there's not a lot of motivation for a primary care provider to do really detailed testing to really understand the health of the thyroid if they know that the patient's insurance isn't going to cover it. And so that's why, with a practice like ours, where we work with mostly self-pay patients, we're working outside of, those really strict guidelines that prevent a lot of people who are feeling sick to some extent from just getting back to feeling healthy or their optimal health.
Are there ways are there ways to negotiate what testing can be done? I guess that would be determined by, say, that particular person's insurance. Are there some tests that are universally covered?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the TSH is covered, and you can always ask your doctor to add on tests. Now, they may or may not say yes, because at the end of the day, it's up to your doctor and their medical decision. But especially if you're having symptoms, you're concerned about thyroid, you can ask for a test beyond TSH, and most doctors are willing to do it and take a closer look. What still could happen though is, I get referred a lot of patients who, for thyroid, for example, the ranges of what's considered normal are extremely wide, and women can be all the way at the lowest end of normal, 1 point above the cutoff, and still their doctor won't treat them, even though they're having all the symptoms of low thyroid and they're at the very lowest end of normal, they're still not being treated. And so that's where, our practice comes in, is because we can start treating you based off of, being on that low end of normal and get you exactly what you need, instead of the standard, with thyroid, for example, there's levothyroxine at very standardized doses. When you work with bioidentical hormones that through a compounding pharmacy, you're able to make a dose specific to your lab results and your symptoms that can be adjusted slowly, and by, as little as 0.25 milligrams. And so it definitely makes it more customized and gives options to those women who haven't been diagnosed officially as hypothyroid, but are really suffering.
Wow. And this, to me, it's fascinating because obviously there's a much more complicated process to what's being covered and under current standards. When we look at perimenopause, before a woman doesn't have a period for more than for a year or more, when is it best to test, or like what is your go-to to start addressing symptoms of concern about getting closer to menopause and hormone imbalances going on? What's your
preference? I mean, I would love if everyone was doing a detailed panel by age 40, because there's definitely going to be
that's
changes.
Early.
It's early, I know. And it definitely, that doesn't mean that you can't wait till later, especially if you're not having any symptoms. But what we know from the studies is that if we catch it early, then you'll get way more benefit, and it's the safest way to treat it, is keeping your levels optimized instead of letting them crash and bringing them back up. And by age 40, there's going to be some changes to some extent. So even if you don't do anything to treat, like having that baseline and knowing what changes are happening in your body, and knowing like, oh yeah, I did notice like I'm way more tired all the time. It's not just me. It's actually some biological changes that can be so valuable. But beyond that, I would say that would be my ideal, obviously. But if you're having any symptoms that seem new, or they're getting, worse than they used to be, like if you've always had a little anxiety, but you feel even more imbalanced as, after age 35, 40, 45, then it's time to get some labs done, because there might be a root cause that we could easily treat.
Now, that would be based on, say, a woman's self-initiative to get that done, right? So if she suspects something is up, then she could, say, reach out to, like, say, you, or, like in this realm to get it done. She doesn't have to wait for a referral. Or is a referral needed to get panels going?
No. So especially, with hormone clinics like ours that just focus on, bioidentical hormone therapy and medical weight loss, you can come direct to us, and we'll give you a great insight just based on your exam history, like going through a medical history and what you're dealing with. That alone will give you a lot of insight based on like on what could be going on as far as some of your symptoms go, if I expect a hormone imbalance to be there. But then anyone can do that detailed panel, because it's going to be a great baseline for your health. As far as getting it covered, going through primary care and getting it covered by insurance, that makes things a lot more complicated. It's going to be really up to your primary care provider.
And you mentioned something about, with the hormone balancing approach, so oftentimes, levels, so you've seen women who have been successfully able to, and I feel like I've seen progression and improvement on my end. You've seen women balance out. What role does that play with losing weight loss, fat loss, however you want to describe it? Like, what's the correlation with that?
Oh, yeah, this is such a great question because a lot of times, when we're talking about weight loss, this aspect gets missed. We see so many different weight loss programs, online, commercials, targeted supplements, things like that. And as a woman over age 40, like none of those things are going to work that well until you address the hormonal issue, because our hormones are such an essential component to our metabolism and the way that we break down fat, how hungry we are, how easily it is for us to feel full, if we have sugar cravings or carbohydrate cravings, all those things can be hormone related and obviously have an impact on our weight. I mean, even down to, if hormone changes are causing you to have low energy, like you're not going to be able to like stick to a great exercise plan as easily. And so definitely addressing those things is so important to weight loss. And a lot of different hormones play a role in weight loss. That's why for women that come to me concerned about their weight, no matter what age, I'm going to be doing a pretty detailed panel to identify, where their sex hormones, so those ones that are most impacted by perimenopause and menopause, like testosterone, because testosterone really is essential to fat burning. Where are their thyroid hormone levels, since thyroid is so important to our metabolism? Where are those adrenal hormone levels, since our adrenals can really prevent us from losing weight? The adrenals can be impacted by stress, trauma, all of that thing, and that can cause us to hold on to fat. And then also checking those insulin and the leptin levels, checking for insulin or leptin resistance. Because all of these different hormones play their own role in your ability to burn fat and have that great metabolism.
So, and this is so good. What is your take on, say, and we've heard that this has been a little bit more of a hot topic, things such as Ozempic and that being a tool that's now that's been widely used to address issues that women and weight loss and all of that. What is your take on Ozempic?
Yeah, I mean, the generic is semaglutide, comes under a few different names. And it's a great product to have in our tool belt. It's a very strong weight loss medication, but it specifically targets that hemoglobin A1C and glucose levels. And so this can potentially be valuable for perimenopause and menopausal patients, because that decline in testosterone, like we talked about before, can cause some insulin resistance. And so working with a medication that accelerates fat loss but also targets that, for some women can be valuable. But the main takeaway, I would say, is it's not a good fit for everybody. And so there's places where you can get it more easily, unfortunately. And I've had women come to me who have had some bad experiences. And really, if doing that lab work will help us identify if this is the right fit for you. And also, it's not going to be a replacement for treating the root cause. So like if the root cause is not that insulin resistance alone, and especially in perimenopause or menopause, we know there's hormone changes going on, you're going to easily regain the weight back.
Wow. And I think this is a powerful distinction to make, because I've seen and I've heard in different circles, especially on social media, you hear people talking about Ozempic or people referring to Ozempic, and it's I love how you said that it's not for everyone. There just seems to be a whole lot of energy behind this being, it almost feels like, oh, it's like the next big thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes the vibe that you get.
Yeah, definitely.
What's the one takeaway that you want women to know about or prescriptions such as Ozempic? What is the one thing that's important to drive home?
I mean, working with someone who really understands how these medications are impacting your hormones. Because if you're doing a medication like this blindly, it can actually have more negative side effects than benefits. And so, really having that understanding of where your hormones are at, if insulin resistance is the primary cause of your difficulty losing weight, is really key to setting yourself up for success, and identifying what the actual root cause is, because don't waste your money if you're just going to regain the weight back afterwards.
That's true. Very, very true. We're going to take a commercial break. We will be right back here on The Health Revolution.
Life is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been showing that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
Share this with your friends and family and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
We're back here on The Health Revolution. We are spending some incredible quality time with Tina Jacobs, certified physician associate, certified weight loss coach, and owner of Silk Life Medical. We're talking about how it's not your fault, it's your hormones. And for all who are tuning in, who are in perimenopause or menopause, this is definitely a show that is filled with reference point and takeaway information. Tina, what is your take on pellets or in other bioidentical tools that are being advertised out there? What's your take on say pellets, for example? I've heard some talk about pellets being something to look at for women in menopause.
Yeah, and when it comes to hormone replacement, there's a lot of different options. The pellets that offer the progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen as well can be a good option for some women. Also coming as the BLA tablets, creams available, injections. And so it's all about really identifying what's going to be working best for you. And there's certain things that we can see on your labs that may point us in one direction or another. And so it's ideal to work with someone that offers all of these different options. There's a lot of places out there, like even some OBGYN clinics that are just throwing in the pellets as an add-on option, or but not, actually looking at what could be the best fit bioidentical hormone for the patient. And so it can be a good fit for some women, but it's not for everyone. The downside of pellets is mostly that, it's inserted into the fat tissue of the hip, slowly dissolves over the course of 3 months. And the that's a great thing because you don't need to think about it on a daily basis, but you're also stuck with that dose for 3 months. We're not able to slowly titrate if you're someone who might be prone to acne or, some of the side effects we watch for with testosterone. We're going to have to give you additional medication to block the testosterone if needed. And so there's advantages to starting with something like an oral BLA tablet or an injection as well, but it's really going to be a customized approach. And that's what we really pride ourselves on at Silk Life is everything is customized based on your specific biology and your specific goals. And so that's the biggest takeaway as far as, considering pellets versus any other type of treatment.
Yes, and I love that. We have obviously put your website on the screen there for viewers to see. One thing that that I had learned from the beginning, and your guidance was incredible, is that even though we were starting on an HRT approach, I knew that there was going to be some tweaking involved. And I've had conversations with some women, both in perimenopause and menopause, where if someone is ready to leap onto it and they're looking as it's going to fix everything, I'm noticing that there's some adjustments that have to be made along the way. Can you talk a little bit about that and the journey in which you're finding the right combinations for the women that you're working with?
Yes. It's definitely not something where, we look at your labs, we have the exact dose, you take it and you feel better the next day. But it's something where you start to feel better that first week. By week 3, you'll notice the full benefits of the dose that you're on, and we'll continue to make some adjustments after that as needed. Now, the reason we approach it this way is because we want to avoid the side effects of just going from no testosterone, for example, or any hormone to plentiful, because that can really have an impact on your body in a negative way. And so to avoid those side effects, we start just under the dose that we expect you to need and slowly increase from there. And so then we get to that perfect sweet spot. The sad thing is, there's a lot of people that have come to me and they're like, I can't use hormones because they were given, they started with a pellet or something with a very high dose of testosterone. They felt horrible and they're like, this is just not for me. And that's usually not the case. It's usually that you were just on the wrong dose and not working with, either bioidentical hormones where we have that option of giving you a very specific dose for your needs, or someone that can work with you to slowly titrate your dose to that optimal place.
How often would you recommend follow-ups? This is another gray area that in conversations with women, they're like, there's no standard for, say, someone who is actively embracing HRT and working with their healthcare provider. What is your recommendation for following up, especially to catch things that maybe have deviated from ideal levels?
Yeah, because, like we're talking about, especially if you start when you're in perimenopause and then you go through menopause, obviously you're not going to need the same medication. That's something that's going to change as your body changes. When it comes for, anyone starting hormone therapy, the way we approach it is, we're monitoring much more closely in the beginning because we're, titrating your dose or adjusting it to exactly getting to meeting your goals without having those side effects. And so in the beginning, we'll touch base with you once you get started on the medication. Week 1, we'll be addressing, reevaluating at week 3 to evaluate what progress we'd make, if we need to make an adjustment to get even more progress. And then monthly at the beginning until we know that you're really at that optimal health place where you're having that great metabolism, energy, not having any symptoms of menopause or perimenopause. And then we can spread out those follow-ups. When it comes to lab work, we want to do our initial blood work after 3 months. And that's what really avoids any, side effects or risks related to hormone replacement, because those changes don't happen overnight. When you do labs at 3 months, you can start to see if there's some changes that we need to treat or make adjustments for. And then once we get you to a consistent dose, we can spread those labs out, to every 6 months. Eventually, if you've been on a consistent dose for many years, to yearly, depending on where you're at in that process of going from perimenopause to menopause.
So let's talk about the services that you have. So obviously you're in Colorado.
Yeah.
Do you just see clients in person or patients?
No, like many people going through COVID, we started our business in the beginning of 2020. So it definitely forced us to shift a little bit than what our original plan was, but I absolutely love it because we've taken so much of what we do online and are able to reach so many more women, because this is such a need out there that isn't available at every place across the country. And so we do see women across the country. You can go to silklife.com and set up that free consult. You can have that first meeting with me and we can decide the right direction to go, or if it's even the right direction for you. And then for blood testing, we have blood testing available across the US. We have options for a phlebotomist to come to your home and draw your blood in the comfort of your home on your schedule, or sending you to a location near you. Our Silk Life location is only here in Colorado. So for patients who want to come in office, we are here for you. But it's nice to have that option to be able to reach so many more people.
One thing I do love is that I'll be honest, I didn't take it very, very seriously in the beginning. So I remember that we were going through the protocols, and I think in my mind, I was like, I'm sure all levels are great. And I remember the first panel that we did, and then you were very detailed about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, but the second one, as you were tying into the information from the first time that my blood panel, that you did my blood panel, just the language that you were using, I could tell that you were in a very supportive way. You were just talking about the seriousness about it, and let's take a deeper dive into the trends. And I remember thinking, wow, she's serious. I better take this seriously. And for whatever reason, it just hit me as such. But looking back, I'm very appreciative of how detailed you are, because it's I even mentioned something to my primary, and she's like, well, yeah, keep doing that. And so because I know she doesn't have as much time as she wishes that she had, but I was in awe of how granular you got with just where we were going and the direction that I was taking. So that's me giving kudos to you. So I was
Thank you so much. Because that's really how we try to be different from not only primary, but other hormone clinics, is that detail, making sure you really understand what your lab results mean and what these treatment options are.
Yes, love that. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back here on The Health Revolution.
Jeff Pearson here, host of Invisible Condition, where we talk about all the people who are living and thriving with all those conditions that you can't necessarily see from the outside. Join me every Tuesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time on E360 TV.
We're back here on The Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison. We've been spending time with Tina Jacobs, certified physician associate, certified weight loss coach, owner of Silk Life Medical, all things hormones. It's not your fault. It's your hormones. For those of you in perimenopause and menopause, this has been incredible information. Let's go ahead and bring back up your website. And do you have anything that is coming up in anything that would be important to know? What Silk Life has to offer, or anything on the horizon going into 2024?
Yes, definitely. I mean, right now, with anyone that's referred by the Health Revolution, we'll provide an extra $50 discount on their first detailed panel. And so we're excited to do that. And that's really what's going to give you the most benefit, is just kind of knowing where you're at and having that really detailed understanding of your health. And right now we're focused mostly on providing the hormone therapy and, women with weight loss goals. So hormone therapy and medical weight loss options. And in the future, we have coming in 2023, we'll also be offering some group goal setting places. So women who are going on hormones together or doing weight loss as a group setting and adding in more of that coaching aspect. And so we're excited for that progress as well.
Yes, I got to tell you, Tina, I ever since I've known you, I feel like having you in my corner has been an incredible journey for me to stay on top of my health, and your wealth of knowledge is just impeccable. So you're such a value, and I wanted to be able to share that with viewers here. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And for those of you who are tuning in on obviously live or then on demand replay, remember you can reach out to Tina at silklife.com. And then in addition to that, for those of you tuning in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. And in tuning in and connecting with the show, our website is www.thehealthrevolutiontv.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and stay in touch and in tune with upcoming shows. And you can certainly share any ideas that you have, any topics that are near and dear to your heart. So with that, we are here. We are live on the Achieve TV channel on E360 TV, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, we will see you soon. Take care.